So this is a very basic implementation of the project, and on the left is the code and on the right is the live preview of the website. And basically I'll walk through the code step by step and tell you what I did. So the first line obviously sets the doc type as HTML, which tells the browser that this is an HTML file. And then the second line is the HTML start open tag and sets the language as English. Then you get into the head, which contains most of the metadata, and it tells the browser what charts to use. And here's the title of the document, which is what's displayed in the tab, like at the top of the browser. And then here is a style tag, and this styles the table and adds borders, which normally would not be there for later. Then next we move to the body, and the body I separated into three different divs, each one for different types of tags, but you normally use divs to separate different categories of content and different sections of the page and stuff like that. And you start with three headers, an H1, H2, and H3, and as you go up in number, the header gets smaller. Next is a paragraph tab, which is a bunch of just filler text, and then there's an unordered list with two list items, and then inside another list item there's an ordered list, which just shows that you can nest them. Normally you wouldn't do this though because it looks really bad in the final product. After that you move on to more like content tags. So there's links, and this link goes to a link on the internet. You can tell because it has this HTTPS. If you don't have that, it won't work. It'll give you an error when you try to follow the link. But this link will just take you to Google, and that won't work in this preview, but it's pretty obvious, pretty straightforward. Then there's a line break here to separate the next link, which would take you to another local page. And you can click that, and then on that page I just have a link to go back. And then there's two more line breaks, which is just for spacing, because we're not doing CSS, like advanced CSS yet. And then there's an image. So in this image, there's a source, and that tells you where the image is, or tells the browser. And in this case, it's just a local image called image.png. And then there's alt text, which will display if the image doesn't load. And that normally would describe the image, but I just described the alt text. And then there's this height attribute. And if you just set the height, then the height will be whatever you set, and then the width will automatically scale to match, to keep the same aspect ratio as the original image. If you set both, then the image will it'll like stretch in order to match that. And there's two more line breaks for spacing, which is kind of unnecessary because you put in a div and then it automatically will space the next line, but it's just for extra spacing. Normally I would use something like margin or padding there. Then there's a third div. This one contains a table and a form. In the table, there are the overall table is nested in table tags, and then there's two rows. Inside the first row, you put th tags, which are headers. They're styled slightly differently from the normal data. You can see they're like bolded in the preview. Then there's data tags in the second row, and then in the second cell on that row, I put in H2 to show you that you can nest different tags however you want. You could put H2, a paragraph, H1, just so you can get different styles in there. And then overall, we return to that style in the beginning. This basic CSS just sets the border for this table so that there are borders. Otherwise, there would be no borders. It would just be spacing, which people use a lot. They use tables for like grid spacing. And then it says padding, which is the distance from the inside to the content, if that makes any sense. Finally, there's another break, and then there's a form. Inside this form, there's an H2, which is the header for the form. You don't actually really need any tags here. Like I use spans and H2s, stuff like that, but you don't need those. If you just have the text, it'll display almost like paragraph text. That's how it'll render. It'll render just like this. But I like to always put tags around my text in case I want to style it or like put different classes on it to space it out however I want. Then there's a field set inside of here, which is basically this box, and that is a way you can delineate different sections of the form. And then in field sets you put a legend, and then that text will show up inside of the box, like in the border. So there's an input type input here, there's a text type input here, and then there's 3 radio buttons that are they all have the same name, and that means that they all will, actually they should say radio. They all have the same name, and that means that they'll all work as part of the same unit, so you can only click one of them at a time. And then you close the field set there, and then there's another line break, and then you finally have a button that submits the form, which doesn't really do anything because this is a very basic thing. So overall, that's basically it. That's this example project. I'd hope that whatever you make is a little more interesting than this. This is kind of boring, but that's just a quick overview of the project and how to make a very basic version of it and how to use tags and attributes.